The research station floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower. Its arms stretched out in all directions, each one holding different laboratories where aliens from across the galaxy worked together. Outside the thick windows, a neutron star spun and pulsed with deadly radiation. Inside, the halls buzzed with activity as researchers from dozens of worlds moved between their experiments. Velsha walked through the crowded corridor with her eyes fixed straight ahead. Her skin was the color of old stone, a flat gray that never changed. Other aliens stepped aside as she passed, some whispering to their companions once she was out of earshot. The Crithian woman had been on the station for 3 years now, and in all that time, no one had ever seen her smile. Her species was known across the galaxy for their crystalline skin that changed colors with their emotions. Most Crithians wore their feelings like a light show, shifting through blues and purples and golds as they talked and laughed with others. But not Velsha. Her skin stayed gray, always gray, like she had locked away everything inside and thrown away the key. She entered her laboratory and sealed the door behind her. The room was perfectly organized, every instrument in its exact place. The walls displayed screens showing quantum field measurements and energy patterns from the neutron star outside. This was her work, the only thing that made sense in a universe that had never made room for her. Velsha sat at her workstation and began reviewing the overnight data. Numbers and graphs filled her vision. She understood them in ways that few others could. The station had hired her because she was brilliant, one of the best quantum researchers in known space. They tolerated her coldness because her work was worth it. A soft chime interrupted her concentration. Someone was requesting entry to her lab. She checked the display and saw an unfamiliar name, Park Jiho Engineering Division. She had not requested any maintenance. With a tired sigh, she opened the door. A human man stood in the doorway carrying a toolbox and wearing a bright smile that seemed far too cheerful for someone working the morning shift. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, and Velsha had not worked with many of them. This one looked young, with dark hair and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Good morning. You must be Velsha. I'm Jiho, your new equipment tech. Just here to do the monthly maintenance check on your quantum resonance array." He walked in without waiting for her response, still smiling like they were old friends. Velsha stared at him for a moment. "The array does not require maintenance for another 2 weeks. Oh, they moved up the schedule. Something about preventive care after that power surge last week." Jiho set his toolbox down and looked around the lab with genuine interest. "Wow, this setup is incredible. You're doing quantum field analysis on neutron star radiation patterns?" "Yes." Velsha turned back to her work, hoping he would take the hint and work in silence. He did not take the hint. "I actually read one of your papers last month. The one about quantum entanglement in high radiation environments. Really fascinating stuff. The way you solved the decoherence problem was brilliant." Velsha's fingers paused over her keyboard. She turned slightly to look at him. Most engineers who came to service her equipment barely understood what it did, let alone read scientific papers about it. "You read academic papers on quantum mechanics?" Jiho shrugged as he opened an access panel on the array. "I like to understand what I'm fixing. Makes me better at my job. Plus, your work is actually interesting." He pulled out a diagnostic scanner and began running tests. "Do you mind if I ask you some questions while I work?" There were a few parts of your methodology I didn't quite follow. For the next hour, Jiho worked on the equipment and asked questions about her research. His questions were good, showing real understanding of the complex concepts. Velsha found herself explaining her work in more detail than she had to anyone in years. He listened carefully, nodding and occasionally offering observations that showed he was actually thinking about what she said. When he finished the maintenance, Jiho packed up his tools and gave her that same bright smile. "All done. Everything looks good. I'll be back in 2 weeks for the next check. Have a great day, Velsha." She watched him leave, feeling something strange that she could not quite identify. The lab seemed quieter than usual after he was gone. Over the following days, Velsha noticed the human around the station. He always smiled and waved when he saw her, even from across a crowded cafeteria. She never acknowledged him, but he did not seem bothered by her lack of response. He just kept smiling, kept waving, kept acting like they were friends even though she had given him no reason to think so. 2 weeks later, he returned for the scheduled maintenance. "Morning, Velsha. How's the research going?" Did you get the data you needed from that stellar flare last week? She had not told him about the stellar flare. You monitor the station's scientific alerts? Sure, when they relate to equipment I maintain. That flare must have given your sensors a real workout. He started his maintenance routine, talking easily as he worked. I bet the quantum measurements were off the charts. They were significant. Velsha found herself describing the data, and once again, Jiho asked intelligent questions that made her think about her own work in new ways. This pattern continued for weeks. Every time Jiho came to her lab, he was cheerful and curious. He never seemed bothered by her short answers or her gray, expressionless appearance. He treated her like a colleague worth talking to, like a person worth knowing. It confused her more than she wanted to admit. Other researchers had warned her about humans when they first joined the galactic community. They were emotional creatures, prone to irrational attachments and inefficient social behaviors. But Jiho's friendliness did not feel inefficient. She did not have a word for what it felt like. One morning, Velsha arrived at her lab to find something unusual outside her door. A small plant in a pot, green and compact with thick leaves. A note was attached. Heard these survive even when you forget about them, like me. Jiho. There was a small drawing of a smiling face next to his name. Velsha picked up the plant and looked at it for a long moment. She should discard it. Plants in laboratories were impractical and could contaminate sensitive equipment. But instead, she carried it inside and placed it on the corner of her workstation, where she could see it while she worked. For just a second, her gray skin flickered with the faintest hint of blue before she forced it back to stone. She stared at the plant, then at her hands, troubled by her own reaction. What was this human doing to her carefully constructed walls? The plant sat on Velsha's workstation for 3 days before anyone noticed it. A visiting scientist from the biology wing made a comment about how unusual it was to see a Crithian keeping a living thing in their workspace. Velsha did not respond, but she found herself glancing at the small green plant more often than necessary. It was alive and growing, completely unbothered by her presence or her coldness, much like the human who had given it to her. Jiho continued his regular visits to maintain her equipment. Each time he greeted her with the same cheerful energy, asked about her research, and worked while humming soft melodies under his breath. The humming annoyed her at first. Then she found herself listening for it, anticipating the particular tune he would choose each day. She never mentioned this, of course. She barely spoke to him beyond answering his technical questions. But something was changing. So slowly she almost did not notice it happening. One afternoon, Velsha was running a critical experiment, measuring quantum fluctuations during a particularly active phase of the neutron star's rotation. The data was coming in perfectly. Everything aligned exactly as her calculations predicted. Then, without warning, her primary sensor array went dark. All the screens displaying real-time measurements turned black. Her skin flickered dark purple for just an instant before she crushed the emotion down. 3 months of preparation, and the equipment had failed at the worst possible moment. She immediately began running diagnostics, her fingers moving rapidly across multiple keyboards at once. The damage assessment made her want to throw something. A core processing unit had burned out, and replacing it would take hours. By then, the stellar phenomenon would be over. Hey, I saw the alert that your array went offline. Need some help? Velsha turned to see Jiho standing in her doorway, toolbox already in hand. She had not called him. She had not called anyone. The experiment is ruined. There is no point. Can I take a look anyway? He did not wait for permission, just walked over to the dead equipment and started examining it. His hands moved quickly, pulling panels and checking connections. Tell me what happened, step by step. She explained the failure, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. Jiho listened while working, occasionally asking her to check certain readings or adjust specific settings. He worked faster than she expected, his movements precise and confident. I think I see the problem, he said after 10 minutes. Your power relay is routing through a secondary junction that wasn't rated for this level of throughput. The junction overheated and triggered a safety shutdown, but if we bypass it and route through the tertiary system instead? His hands moved quickly, rewiring connections that Velsha would have needed an hour to map properly. The tertiary system is not designed for this load, Velsha said, but she was already pulling up the specifications to calculate if it could work. Not originally, but look here. Jiho pointed to a series of modifications in the system architecture. Someone upgraded this section last year and never updated the documentation. You've actually got more capacity than you think. Velcia stared at the specifications. He was right. How had she missed this? She had reviewed these systems dozens of times, but Jiho had seen it in minutes, approaching the problem from a different angle than she would have considered. Can you reroute the data feeds while I finish the power connections? Jiho asked. If we hurry, you might still catch the end of your stellar event. They worked together in focused silence, their movements synchronized without need for discussion. Velcia found herself anticipating what tool Jiho would need next, handing it to him before he asked. He did the same, adjusting settings she would have changed anyway, saving precious seconds. The array powered back up with 5 minutes to spare. Data began flowing across her screens again, capturing the last moments of the neutron star's active phase. It was not everything she had hoped for, but it was enough. It was more than she had thought possible 10 minutes ago. Got it. Jiho grinned at her, looking genuinely happy about saving her experiment. That was close. Good thing I happened to check the maintenance alerts when I did. Velcia looked at him for a long moment. You do not normally check alerts for equipment that is not scheduled for maintenance. His grin faltered slightly. Well, no, but your work is important, so I keep an eye on things. Just in case. Why? The question seemed to surprise him. He scratched the back of his head, suddenly looking less confident. I guess because your research matters and you work really hard at it. Seemed worth making sure your equipment doesn't let you down. Velcia's skin flickered blue for just a second, the Crithian color for respect and acknowledgement. She forced it back to gray immediately, but not before Jiho's eyes widened slightly. He had noticed. He said nothing about it, but his smile softened into something gentler. I will review my maintenance schedules more carefully, Velcia said quietly. It was the closest she could come to thanking him. Sounds good. Let me know if you need anything else. He picked up his toolbox and headed for the door, then paused. Hey, is the plant doing okay? Those things are pretty hardy, but let me know if it starts looking sad. I can get you another one. The plant is adequate. She glanced at the small succulent, still green and healthy on her workstation. It requires very little care. Yeah, that's why I picked it. Jiho smiled again, that bright expression that seemed to come so easily to him. See you later, Velcia. After he left, Velcia stood in her laboratory surrounded by her saved data and running equipment. She looked at the plant, then at her hands, then at the door where Jiho had disappeared. Something uncomfortable was stirring in her chest, an emotion she had not allowed herself to feel in years. She pulled up his personnel file on her computer. Park Jiho, human, age 29. Engineering specialist with advanced degrees in both mechanical systems and energy dynamics. His performance reviews were excellent, noting his unusual ability to see solutions others missed. His supervisors mentioned that he was friendly with everyone but seemed to have few close friends on the station. Velcia closed the file, feeling intrusive for looking. Why did she care about his background? Why did his smile make her skin want to shift colors she had not shown in 15 years? Why did she find herself hoping he would return sooner than his scheduled maintenance visit? These were dangerous thoughts. She had learned long ago that wanting connection with others only brought pain. Her people had made it clear she was not meant for the social bonds that came naturally to other Crithians. She was broken in ways that could not be fixed, and the kindest thing she could do was keep her distance from everyone. But the plant on her desk seemed to argue otherwise. It sat there, alive and growing. Proof that sometimes things could survive even when neglected. Like me, Jiho had written. The words echoed in her mind. Velcia turned back to her work, analyzing the data from her rescued experiment. But her eyes kept drifting to that small plant and to the door, and to thoughts of a smiling human who had spent time watching over her equipment just in case she needed help. She did not know what to do with these feelings. So she did what she always did. She pushed them down, locked them away, and returned to the comfortable world of numbers and data where nothing could hurt her. But in the corner of her workstation, the plant kept growing. The station's cafeteria was always crowded during the midday meal period. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy gathered to eat, filling the large space with a chaos of different languages, smells, and colors. Most researchers sat in groups, clustered by species or department. Some mixed freely, the social ones who made friends easily regardless of their world of origin. Velcia always sat alone at a small table in the corner, as far from the noise as possible. She ate her meal quickly, focusing only on the nutritional requirements her body needed. She never looked up from her food, never acknowledged the others around her. After 15 minutes, she would leave and return to her laboratory. This had been her routine for 3 years, until today. Today, Jiho walked into the cafeteria carrying his lunch tray, saw Velsha in her corner, and walked to a table nearby. Not at her table, that would have been too direct, too invasive, but close enough that she could see him from the corner of her eye. He sat down, pulled out a datapad, and began eating while reading something on his screen. Velsha tried to ignore him. She focused on her food, on the nutritional content of each bite, on the efficiency of her eating process. But she was aware of him there, just a few meters away. He was reading something that made him smile occasionally, completely comfortable in his own company. The next day, he did it again. Same table, same casual presence, as if sitting near her was the most natural thing in the world. He still did not try to talk to her or invade her space. He just existed nearby, a quiet presence that asked for nothing. By the end of the week, it had become a pattern. Velsha would arrive at her corner table, and within minutes, Jiho would appear at his table nearby. Sometimes he read, sometimes he talked quietly with other engineers who joined him, but he was always there, a constant like the neutron star outside the station's windows. On the 8th day, Velsha did something she had not planned. She finished reviewing a research paper on her datapad and, without really thinking about it, she slid the device across the empty space between their tables. It stopped halfway between them, clearly meant for Jiho to see. He looked up, surprised. He picked up the pad and read the title, New Approaches to Quantum Field Manipulation in Extreme Gravity Wells. His eyebrows rose. Is this yours? No. Another researcher published it last week. There are several errors in the methodology. Velsha kept her eyes on her food. You mentioned interest in quantum mechanics. You might find the flaws instructive. Jiho smiled, that gentle expression that never seemed to demand anything from her. Thanks, I'll read it tonight. He set the pad on his table and went back to his lunch. He did not make a big moment out of it, did not try to turn it into a longer conversation. He simply accepted the small gesture for what it was, a beginning. The following week, another human joined Jiho at his regular table. Kang Mira was a xenobiologist who worked in the life sciences division. She was sharp-featured and direct in her manner, with short black hair and an expression that suggested she did not suffer fools. Velsha had seen her around the station but had never interacted with her. You're wasting your time, you know, Mira said to Jiho, her voice carrying to Velsha's nearby table. She did not bother to lower her voice. That Krithian woman. Everyone knows she doesn't want friends. Maybe she just hasn't found the right friends yet, Jiho replied calmly. Or maybe she's made it very clear she prefers being alone, and you're not respecting that. Mira stabbed her food with more force than necessary. Some people don't want to be saved, Jiho. You can't fix everyone. I'm not trying to fix anyone. I'm just being friendly. There's friendly, and then there's this. Mira gestured vaguely toward Velsha's table. You sit here every day like some kind of hopeful puppy. It's sad. Velsha's fingers tightened around her fork. She told herself she did not care what this other human thought. She told herself that Mira was right, that she should want Jiho to stop his foolish persistence. But the words stung in a way she had not expected. I don't think it's sad, Jiho said quietly. I think eating lunch alone every single day looks lonely. And I have lunch to eat anyway, so why not eat it here? Because normal people take a hint when someone doesn't talk to them for weeks? Maybe I'm not normal people. Jiho smiled, but it was different from his usual bright expression. Softer, more serious. Besides, she shared a research paper with me last week. That's something, Mira sighed. Fine, it's your time to waste. Just don't come crying to me when you realize you've been talking to a wall for 6 months. They changed the subject after that, discussing some project in Mira's department. But Velsha barely heard the rest of their conversation. Her mind was stuck on Jiho's words. Lonely. He thought she looked lonely. Was that how she appeared to others? Not cold or efficient or professionally distant, but simply lonely? The thought disturbed her more than it should have. She had chosen this isolation, had built these walls deliberately. She was not lonely. She was safe. But that night in her quarters, Velsha stood in front of her mirror and studied her reflection. Her crystalline skin was its usual flat gray, showing nothing. Her face was expressionless, her posture perfect and controlled. She looked exactly how she wanted to look. Untouchable, unreachable, alone, lonely. She thought about Jiho sitting at that nearby table every day, not because he expected anything from her, but because he simply showed up. She thought about the plant on her workstation, thriving despite minimal care. She thought about the way he had saved her experiment without being asked, the way he treated her like a colleague worth knowing. Before she could stop herself, before she could suppress it, her skin flickered through a cascade of colors. Blue for respect, gold for warmth, and then a deep purple that she recognized with shock. Fear. She was afraid of what Jiho represented, afraid of wanting something she had given up on years ago. Velsha forced her skin back to gray and turned away from the mirror. This was foolish. She was being irrational. Humans were emotional creatures, and Jiho's friendliness meant nothing more than that. He was kind to everyone, probably. She was reading too much into simple gestures. But the next day, when she entered the cafeteria for lunch, she found herself looking for him before she sat down. And when he appeared a few minutes later with his tray and his datapad, and his comfortable presence, something in her chest loosened just slightly. She did not slide another research paper to him that day, but she also did not leave after 15 minutes like usual. She stayed for 20, then 25. Not talking, not interacting, just existing in the same space as another being who did not seem to mind her presence. It was not much. But for Velsha, who had been alone for 15 years, it was something. Something small and fragile and terrifying. 2 tables apart, Jiho glanced up from his reading and caught her eye for just a second. He smiled, that gentle expression that asked for nothing. Velsha looked away quickly, her skin threatening to shift colors again. But this time, in the privacy of her own mind, she admitted the truth. She was lonely. She had been lonely for 15 years, and somehow this persistent human had noticed what no one else had bothered to see. She did not know what to do with that knowledge. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, she was not entirely certain she wanted to be alone anymore. The announcement came through official station channels during the morning shift. A Krithian diplomatic delegation would be arriving in 3 days for interspecies treaty negotiations. All Krithian personnel were requested to attend the formal reception as representatives of their homeworld. The message included Velsha's name specifically. She stared at the notification on her screen, feeling her carefully controlled breathing start to quicken. No, this could not happen. She had avoided Krithian gatherings for 15 years. She had built her entire life around staying away from her own people. The problem was not just social discomfort. Krithians were telepathic within their own species, able to feel the emotional resonance of other Krithians nearby. In groups, they formed a network of shared feelings, a constant background hum of connection that most of her people found comforting. For Velsha, whose telepathic sensitivity was extreme, it was like standing in a hurricane of emotions that did not belong to her. She had tried to explain this to administrators before. They never understood. To them, it was just social anxiety, something she should overcome for professional reasons. They did not know about the bonding ritual she had failed, about the way other Krithians' emotions crashed through her mind like waves trying to drown her. They did not know she had been sent away from her homeworld because her presence caused pain to others. Her overwhelming sensitivity, creating feedback loops that hurt everyone around her. She deleted the notification and tried to focus on her work, but her hands were shaking, and her skin kept flickering through colors she could not control. Dark purple for fear, black for shame, and flashes of deep red that meant pain. For 3 days, Velsha barely slept. She spent her time in the laboratory running calculations that did not need running, checking equipment that did not need checking, anything to avoid thinking about the reception. On the morning of the event, she made her decision. She would not attend. They could not force her. She would simply stay in her laboratory with the doors locked and ignore all communications. But when she arrived at her lab that morning, she found Jiho already there, working on maintenance that definitely was not scheduled. He looked up when she entered, and his usual smile faded immediately. "Velsha, are you okay? You look—" He trailed off, concern clear in his expression. "I am functional." Her voice came out more harsh than intended. "Why are you here?" "Routine check." But seriously, are you all right? Your skin is, he gestured vaguely. I mean, I don't know what all the colors mean, but that doesn't look like your normal gray. Velsha looked down at her hands and saw them flickering rapidly through dark colors she could not suppress. She tried to force them back to gray, but her control was slipping. Too much stress, too little sleep, too much fear building up inside her. The reception is tonight, she said quietly, for the Crithian delegation. Right, I saw the announcement. That's exciting, getting to see people from your homeworld. I will not be attending. Jiho tilted his head, studying her. Because you don't want to, or because you're scared to? The question cut through her defenses like a blade. That is not your concern. Okay. He set down his tools and leaned against the workbench, giving her his full attention. Can I tell you something? You don't have to go if you don't want to. You don't owe anyone an explanation, but I've noticed over the past few months that you seem to carry a lot of weight around, like you're holding something heavy all the time, and I just want you to know that whatever it is, it's not a burden you have to carry alone. You do not understand. Velsha's skin flashed black. You cannot understand. Then help me understand. Something inside Velsha broke. Maybe it was the sleepless nights or the mounting pressure, or simply the fact that someone was offering to listen without judgment. The words came out in a rush, disjointed and desperate. I am defective. When Crithians reach adolescence, we undergo a bonding ritual. We connect our minds with others, form telepathic networks that support us throughout our lives. I wanted to bond, but my sensitivity is too strong. When I connected with the others, I felt everything they felt, all of it. Every fear, every pain, every moment of sadness or anger. It flooded through me like fire, and I could not shut it out. And worse, they felt my pain too. I hurt them. My fear hurt them. They had to break the connection before it damaged us all. Jiho listened without interrupting, his expression serious but not pitying. They told me I was too broken to bond, too sensitive. They sent me away because being near other Crithians causes me pain and causes them pain. I have been alone for 15 years because that is what I am. Broken and alone. Her voice cracked on the last word. And tonight there will be 5 Crithians in the reception hall. I will feel their emotions. They will feel mine, and I will remember everything I cannot have. That sounds terrifying, Jiho said simply. I'm sorry that happened to you. Velsha had expected many responses. Arguments that she should try anyway. Assurances that it would not be so bad. Suggestions for how to fix herself. But a simple acknowledgement of her pain? That was unexpected. I cannot attend, she whispered. I cannot face them. Jiho was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he stood up straight. What if you didn't have to face them alone? And what if there was a way to dampen the telepathic signals? Just enough to make it bearable. There is no such technology. Not developed specifically for that, no. But I've been reading about Crithian telepathy since we became friends. He walked over to his toolbox and pulled out a small device. This is a neural white noise generator. We use them in engineering to test communication systems. It generates a low-level electromagnetic field that creates interference. Not enough to block signals completely, but enough to add static to the channel. Velsha stared at the device. You want to use industrial testing equipment to interfere with telepathic connections? I want to give you a chance to attend that reception if you want to. Not because you have to, but because you deserve the choice. Jiho held out the device. It's crude. It might not work. But if you want to try, I'll be there with you, as your assistant or your colleague or whatever excuse we need to make. You won't be alone. She looked at the device, then at Jiho's face. He was serious. He had spent time researching her species, thinking about her problem, trying to find a solution. Not because she had asked him to, but because he cared enough to try. Why would you do this? Velsha asked, her voice barely audible. Why do you persist in caring about what happens to me? Jiho smiled, soft and genuine. Because you're my friend. And friends show up. The word hit her like a physical impact. Friend? No one had called her that in 15 years. No one had chosen to stand beside her, to offer support without expectation of return. The walls she had built around herself, the ones that had protected her for so long, suddenly felt like a prison. Her skin erupted in colors she could not control, blue for deep respect, gold for warmth and gratitude, and then a brilliant amber that meant affection, the kind of emotion she had not allowed herself to feel since she was young. She tried to suppress it, to force it back down, but she was too tired and too overwhelmed. I do not know how to be someone's friend, she admitted. I have forgotten how. That's okay. We'll figure it out together. Jiho held out the device again. So what do you say? Want to give this a try? Or we can skip the whole thing and I'll bring dinner to your lab. Your choice. No pressure. Velsha looked at the device for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out and took it from his hand. Her crystalline fingers brushed against his human skin, warm and alive and real. I will try, she whispered. If you are certain you will be there. I'll be right beside you the whole time, promise. That evening, Velsha stood outside the reception hall with Jiho beside her, and the neural white noise generator clipped to her belt. She could already feel the presence of other Crithians inside, their emotions a distant pressure at the edge of her consciousness, but the device was working, creating just enough interference to keep the feelings from overwhelming her. Ready? Jiho asked gently. Velsha's skin flickered through anxious purples and blacks. But when she looked at Jiho, saw his steady presence beside her, some of the colors shifted toward calmer blues. No, but I will try anyway. That's all anyone can ask. He offered his arm in a formal gesture. Shall we? She hesitated only a moment before placing her hand on his arm. Together they walked into the reception hall, into the crowd of diplomats and researchers, into the presence of her own people. And for the first time in 15 years, Velsha was not facing her fear alone. The reception hall was filled with beings from a dozen different worlds. Diplomats in formal attire moved through the crowd, speaking in multiple languages while automated translators worked to bridge the gaps in communication. Velsha felt the familiar pressure of the other Crithians' presence immediately, but Jiho's device kept it at a manageable level. Instead of drowning in their emotions, she felt them like distant echoes, present but not overwhelming. You're doing great, Jiho murmured beside her. He was dressed in formal human attire, looking professional and serious in a way she had not seen before. How's the device working? It is adequate. Velsha scanned the room and spotted the Crithian delegation near the central platform. 5 of them, their skin shifting through social colors as they conversed with station administrators, blues and golds and warm ambers, the colors of people comfortable in their own community. I can feel them, but it is not painful. Good, remember, we can leave whenever you want. Just say the word. They moved through the crowd slowly. Several researchers nodded to Velsha in acknowledgement, surprise clear on their faces at seeing her at a social event. Some looked curious about her human companion, but no one questioned his presence. Jiho had registered as her technical assistant for the evening, a legitimate reason to attend diplomatic functions. The Crithian delegation noticed her eventually. One of them, an older male whose skin showed patterns that marked him as high-ranking, separated from the group and approached. His skin shifted through curious blues as he studied Velsha. I do not recognize you from the delegation registry, he said in the Crithian language. His words carried emotional undertones that made Velsha's telepathic sense ache, despite the dampening field. Are you stationed here? Yes, Ambassador. Velsha kept her skin carefully gray, revealing nothing. I am a quantum researcher. I have been here for 3 years. 3 years? Yet you have not returned home or attended any cultural gatherings. The ambassador's skin flickered with something that might have been disapproval. That is unusual for our people. We value community connection. I have my research. Velsha's voice was flat, emotionless. She felt Jiho shift slightly beside her, a small movement of support. The ambassador's attention turned to Jiho, curiosity sharpening in his expression. And who is this? Your colleague? Park Jiho, sir. I'm an engineer on the station. Jiho's voice was respectful but not subservient. I assist Velsha with her quantum research equipment, a human assistant. The ambassador's skin shifted through colors that suggested interest mixed with something less pleasant. How practical. Though I must say it is strange to see one of our people working so closely with an alien species. He looked back at Velsha. Your designation code seems familiar. Have we met before? Velsha's skin flickered dark purple before she could stop it. The ambassador's eyes narrowed in recognition. He accessed something on a small device, reading quickly, and his skin shifted to a cold blue. Velsha of the Northern Crystalline Territory, the one who could not complete her bonding. His voice carried pity now, which somehow felt worse than contempt. I had heard you were sent off-world. It is unfortunate that you could not adapt to our ways. The bonding is central to Crithian identity. I am aware. Velsha's voice was barely above a whisper. Her skin was turning darker, black creeping in at the edges. Shame, deep and old. You abandoned your calling to hide among aliens. The ambassador shook his head, his skin showing disappointment. Our people need every member to contribute to the collective. By isolating yourself here, you reject the very essence of what makes us Crithian. Velsha felt the words like physical blows. Every fear she had carried for 15 years, every doubt about her own worth was being confirmed by this representative of her people. She had been right to stay away. She did not belong, not with humans, and certainly not with her own kind. Excuse me, Ambassador. Jiho's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts, polite but firm. With respect, I think you're wrong. The ambassador turned to him, surprise clear in his rapidly shifting skin. I beg your pardon? Velsha didn't abandon anything. She adapted. Jiho kept his tone respectful, but there was steel underneath. She found a way to survive and thrive in circumstances that would have broken most people. She's one of the most brilliant researchers on this station, and her work has advanced quantum field theory in ways that benefit everyone, including your people. That takes more strength than you're giving her credit for. You are human. You cannot possibly understand the importance of our bonding traditions. You're right, I don't fully understand your traditions, but I understand that judging someone for being different, for needing to find their own path, is wrong in any culture. Jiho looked at Velsha, his eyes warm with conviction. She's not less Crithian because she couldn't complete your ritual. She's just Crithian in a different way. The ambassador's skin flickered through several colors, confusion mixing with irritation. This is a cultural matter that does not concern you. It concerns me when someone I care about is being told they're not good enough because they don't fit a specific mold. Jiho stood a little straighter. Where I come from, we're learning that strength comes in many forms. Maybe it's time your people learned that too. A tense silence followed. Other diplomats nearby had stopped their conversations to watch the exchange. Velsha wanted to disappear, to run from the attention, but she was frozen in place. Her skin was cycling through colors rapidly, unable to settle on any single emotion. The ambassador studied Jiho for a long moment, then looked back at Velsha. You have found an interesting defender, at least, though I question the wisdom of forming attachments with species who do not share our telepathic nature. How can you truly connect with beings who cannot feel what you feel? Maybe connection isn't just about telepathy, Jiho said quietly. Maybe it's about showing up, about caring enough to try, even when it's difficult, about seeing someone for who they are, not who you think they should be. The ambassador's skin shifted through several more colors before settling into a neutral blue. You are idealistic, young human, but idealism does not change the reality of what she is. She will always be separated from her people, unable to bond as nature intended. He turned to Velsha. I hope you have found peace in your isolation. It is all you will ever have. He walked away, rejoining the other Crithians. Their skin colors shifted as he communicated something to them, and several glanced at Velsha with expressions she could not quite read. Pity, perhaps, or relief that they were not like her. Velsha stood very still, her skin now completely black. The color of anguish, of shame so deep it had no other expression. We should leave, she whispered. Are you okay? No, I need to leave now. Jiho did not argue. He guided her quickly through the crowd and out of the reception hall, away from the stares and whispers. They walked in silence through empty corridors until they reached an observation deck that overlooked the neutron star. The space was deserted, just transparent walls showing the deadly beauty of the spinning star outside. Velsha stood at the window, her skin still black, her hands trembling. He was right. Everything he said was right. I am broken. I do not belong with my people. I do not belong anywhere. Stop. Jiho's voice was gentle but firm. He moved to stand beside her. He wasn't right. He was cruel. He spoke the truth. I failed my bonding. I cannot connect with other Crithians. I am different. You're different. That's not the same as broken. Jiho looked at her intently. Velsha, I've watched you work for months. I've seen your brilliant mind solve problems that would stump anyone else. I've seen your dedication, your precision, your care for your research. I've seen the way you slowly let yourself trust me, even though it scared you. None of that is broken, but I am alone. I will always be alone. No, you won't. Jiho reached out slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted. When she did not, he took her hand in his. His skin was warm against her crystalline surface. You have me. For whatever that's worth. I'm not telepathic and I don't understand everything about your culture, but I'm here. I see you. And I'm not going anywhere. Velsha looked down at their joined hands, human and Crithian, two beings who should have nothing in common. But his hand was solid and real and warm, an anchor in the storm of her emotions. Why? Her voice broke on the word. Why do you care so much about someone who has nothing to offer you? Because friendship isn't a transaction. I don't care about you because of what you can offer me. I care about you because you're you. Because you're kind even when you try to hide it. Because you shared that research paper with me. Because you kept the plant I gave you. Because you're brave enough to keep trying even when everything hurts. He squeezed her hand gently. You think you're broken, but I see someone who survived 15 years of loneliness and still managed to be brilliant and dedicated and, yes, kind. That's not broken. That's incredible. Velsha's skin finally shifted from black. Colors swirled across her surface, a cascade she could not control. Deep blue for respect, gold for warmth, and then a brilliant amber that glowed in the dim light of the observation deck. Affection deep and profound, the kind she had thought she would never feel again. I do not know what to do with this, she admitted, looking at their joined hands. I do not know how to be close to some. 3 weeks after the reception, Velsha found herself in the cafeteria sitting at Jiho's table instead of her own. Not every day, not even most days, but occasionally. Sometimes Mira was there too, and the xenobiologist had stopped making comments about wasted time. She had even smiled at Velsha once, a brief acknowledgement that maybe she had been wrong. The plant on Velsha's workstation had been joined by a second one, this time a small flowering species that Jiho said bloomed once a year. Something to look forward to, he had explained. Velsha checked on both plants daily now, making sure they had water and light. She was not sure when caring for them had become part of her routine, but it had. She was in her laboratory analyzing data when the emergency alarms began. The sound was deafening, echoing through every corridor of the station. Red lights flashed in warning patterns. Velsha's screens immediately switched to emergency protocols, showing a critical alert from the station's central systems. Solar flare incoming. Radiation levels exceeding safe limits. Shields compromised. Evacuation procedures initiated. Her heart sank as she read the details. The neutron star was experiencing an unpredicted burst of activity, something that happened rarely but catastrophically. The station's shields could handle normal radiation levels, but this flare would overwhelm them. Everyone needed to evacuate to the reinforced safe zones in the station's core, and even those might not be completely protected. Velsha began shutting down her equipment according to emergency protocols. Her hands moved automatically, following procedures drilled into all station personnel. But then she noticed something that made her freeze. Her quantum resonance array was still running an active experiment, one that had been collecting data for the past 8 months. The data storage was in the middle of a complex write operation, transferring information to the protected archives. If she shut it down now, 8 months of work would be lost. Irreplaceable observations, unique measurements that could never be replicated, because they depended on specific stellar conditions that would not occur again for years. But if she waited for the transfer to complete, she might not make it to the safe zones in time. The evacuation alarm continued blaring. Personnel were already fleeing through the corridors, heading for safety. Velsha stared at her screens, watching the data transfer progress. 73% complete. 5 minutes remaining, maybe 6. The radiation would reach critical levels in approximately 8 minutes. She could not abandon the work. Not after everything she had invested. But staying meant exposing herself to radiation that could kill her. Velsha. Jiho appeared in her doorway, breathing hard like he had been running. What are you doing? We need to get to the safe zones now. I cannot. The data transfer is not complete. Jiho looked at her screen, understanding dawning in his eyes. How long? 5 minutes. Maybe 6. And how long until the radiation hits? 8 minutes. Possibly less. Then we wait. Jiho came into the lab and closed the door behind him. No. Velsha's skin flashed dark purple. You need to go. There's no reason for both of us to risk. I'm not leaving you here alone. His voice was firm, brooking no argument. If you're staying, I'm staying. End of discussion. This is foolish. The data's not worth your life, maybe not, but you are. Jiho pulled out his engineering pad and started scanning the lab systems. Okay, we've got 8 minutes before things get really bad. What can we do to buy more time? Velsha wanted to argue, wanted to force him to leave. But the determined look on his face told her he would not go. And selfishly, she did not want to face this alone. The radiation shielding on this section is minimal. We could try to reinforce it by routing additional power to the field generators. On it. Jiho's fingers flew across his pad. Can you set up a secondary barrier using your equipment? Some of this quantum field manipulation technology might create interference with the radiation. They worked frantically. Reconfiguring systems never meant to serve as radiation shielding. It was improvised and desperate, but it was something. The data transfer continued in the background, the progress bar moving with agonizing slowness. 80%, 85. The first wave of radiation hit. Alarms throughout the lab began screaming. Velsha felt it as a physical sensation, a burning pressure against her crystalline skin. Jiho winced, his human physiology even more vulnerable to the invisible assault. How much longer? He asked, his voice strained. 2 minutes for the transfer. But the radiation levels are already dangerous. We can make it 2 more minutes. Jiho continued his work, routing power and adjusting fields. Talk to me about something, anything. Take your mind off the radiation. What? Velsha looked at him in disbelief. This is hardly the time for conversation. Humor me. Tell me something about yourself. Something I don't know. Why does this matter right now? Because if we're going to die in the next 2 minutes, I want to know more about my friend. Jiho's hands never stopped working, but he glanced at her with a slight smile. So talk. The absurdity of the situation, the terror and the desperate hope, cracked something in Velsha's carefully maintained control. Words started tumbling out, things she had never told anyone. I used to love music. Before the failed bonding, before everything went wrong, Crithian music is telepathic, shared emotions woven into sound. I could feel it more intensely than anyone else. It was beautiful and overwhelming and terrifying all at once. Her skin flickered through colors as memories flooded back. After I was sent away, I never listened to music again. It hurt too much, experiencing beauty alone when it was meant to be shared. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, Jiho said quietly. We should fix that. After this, I'll introduce you to human music. It's different, probably simpler than what you're used to, but maybe you'll like it. You speak as if there will definitely be an after. There will be. I'm optimistic like that. The radiation alarms intensified. Jiho gritted his teeth against the pain but kept working. Keep talking. Tell me more. I am frightened. The admission came out as a whisper, not just of the radiation. I'm frightened of everything, of being close to people, of being hurt again, of wanting things I cannot have. I have been frightened for 15 years and I am tired of it. Then stop. Jiho looked at her directly. Stop being afraid, or at least be afraid and do things anyway. That's what courage is. I do not know how. Yes, you do. You're doing it right now. You're telling me things you've never told anyone. That's courage. The data transfer hit 95%. Almost there. Come on, come on. The radiation levels were becoming critical. Velsha could see Jiho's skin reddening, his human physiology struggling with the exposure. Her own crystalline structure could handle more, but even she had limits. The makeshift shielding they had created was failing. Jiho, we need to leave now. Not yet. 20 more seconds. He was hunched over his pad, his hands shaking. Just 20 more seconds. You are dying for data that might not even matter in the grand scheme of things. I'm not dying for the data. Jiho looked up at her and his eyes were clear despite the pain. I'm staying because you're staying. Because this matters to you, which means it matters to me. Because that's what friends do. 98%. 99, 100%. It's done. Velsha grabbed Jiho's arm. The transfer is complete. We need to go. They ran. The corridors were empty. Everyone else already in the safe zones. Emergency bulkheads were starting to close, sealing off sections to contain the radiation. They had to slide under one barrier as it descended, barely making it through before it sealed shut. Jiho stumbled, and Velsha caught him. His skin was badly burned, his breathing labored, but he kept moving, kept pushing forward with her support. They could see the entrance to the safe zone ahead, the reinforced blast doors still open but beginning to close. Almost there, Velsha said. though she was not sure if she was reassuring him or herself. They made it through the doors with seconds to spare. The blast door sealed behind them with a final definitive clang. Inside the safe zone, medical personnel rushed forward immediately. Someone pulled Jiho away to treat his radiation burns. Someone else tried to examine Velsha, but she pushed them aside, her eyes locked on the human being carried to the medical station. The room was crowded with evacuated personnel, all safe now, but Velsha could only see Jiho, collapsed on a medical bed, his skin red and blistered. She pushed through the crowd until she reached his side. "You foolish human," she whispered, her skin flickering through every color in rapid succession. "You could have died." Jiho opened his eyes, managing a weak smile. "But I didn't. We didn't. And your data is safe. The data does not matter." The truth of the words surprised her even as she said them. "You matter." "Good." Jiho's eyes were closing, exhaustion and pain taking their toll. "That's progress. You're starting to understand friendship." The medic gently moved Velsha aside to treat Jiho's injuries. She stood back, watching them work, her skin still cycling through colors she could not control. Blue for respect, gold for gratitude, deep amber for affection that had grown into something she was afraid to name. And underneath it all, flashes of silver, a color so rare most Crithians never dissed. The station took 2 weeks to fully recover from the radiation event. Repairs were made, systems were restored, and life gradually returned to normal. Jiho spent 3 days in medical care recovering from his radiation exposure. Velsha visited him every day, sitting beside his bed even when he was too tired to talk. She brought him datapads with interesting research papers, updated him on the quantum measurements from the saved data, and sometimes just sat in silence while he slept. On the 4th day, he was cleared to return to light duty. Velsha found him in the engineering bay, checking equipment with careful movements that showed he was still healing. "You should be resting," she said from the doorway. Jiho turned and smiled, that familiar expression that had become so important to her. "I got bored. Besides, I heal better when I'm working." He set down his tools. "How's the data looking? Was it worth it?" "The data is excellent. Unprecedented measurements that will advance quantum field theory significantly." Velsha moved closer, her skin shifting through thoughtful blues. "But you were right. It was not worth your life. I should not have stayed. But you did stay, because the work mattered to you." Jiho leaned against the workbench. "And I stayed because you mattered to me. I'd make the same choice again. That is irrational, probably, but friendship isn't always rational." He studied her face. "You've been different since the evacuation, more present, I guess. Less gray, it was true." Velsha's skin had been shifting colors more freely in the past 2 weeks. Not constantly, not wildly, but present. She was no longer suppressing everything all the time. It felt strange, vulnerable, like walking without armor, but also liberating. "I have been thinking," Velsha said carefully, "about what you said during the evacuation. About courage being doing things while afraid." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I have spent 15 years being afraid. Afraid of connection, afraid of pain, afraid of being rejected again. The fear has not protected me. It has only made me smaller. And now I am still afraid. But I am tired of letting fear make my decisions." Her skin shifted to a warm amber. "You have shown me that connection does not have to hurt. That there are people who will stay even when things are difficult. That being different does not mean being broken." Jiho's expression softened. "You were never broken, Velsha. Just alone, and you're not alone anymore." "No, I am not." She looked around the engineering bay, then back at him. "You mentioned human music. I would like to hear it sometime. If the offer still stands." His face lit up. "Really? Yes, absolutely. I have so much music to show you. Different styles, different moods. We can start with something gentle, nothing too overwhelming." Over the following weeks, a new routine developed. After work, Jiho would sometimes come to Velsha's quarters with a portable speaker and introduce her to human music. He started with simple instrumental pieces, watching her reactions carefully. Velsha found it fascinating how humans conveyed emotion through purely auditory means, without any telepathic component. It was lonely in a way, each listener experiencing the music in isolation, but also beautiful in its own right. "What do you think?" Jiho asked after playing a piece he described as classical music from Earth. "It is contained," Velsha said thoughtfully. "Crithian music spreads through multiple minds, becoming larger than any single experience. This human music is complete within itself, requiring no sharing. I think I understand now why you said we could experience beauty alone. It is different but not lesser. That's very diplomatic of you. I am being honest. The music is beautiful, just different from what I knew. Her skin shifted to soft gold. Thank you for sharing it with me. These small moments accumulated. Velsha began eating lunch at Jiho's table regularly. She started acknowledging other researchers when they greeted her, even responding with brief pleasantries. Mira invited her to a discussion group about xenobiology, and Velsha attended, contributing observations from her own research. The station's cold, isolated Crethean scientist was slowly becoming part of the community. But the most significant changes happened in the quiet moments with Jiho. Long conversations in her laboratory about everything and nothing. Comfortable silences while they worked side by side. The easy way they had learned to read each other's moods and needs. Velsha found herself anticipating his visits, planning her day around the time she might see him, feeling disappointed when his engineering duties took him to other parts of the station. One evening, 6 weeks after the evacuation, they were in the observation deck watching the neutron star. It had become their space, somewhere they often retreated to when the station felt too crowded or when they simply wanted quiet company. Jiho was telling her about his family on Earth, about his older brother who was getting married soon. I wish I could go to the wedding, Jiho said, but it's too far and I can't leave the station right now with all the repair work still happening. You miss your family, Velsha observed. Yeah. I chose to come here and I love the work. But yeah, I miss them. He looked at her curiously. Do you ever miss your family? Your homeworld? Velsha was quiet for a long time. I miss what I thought my life would be. I miss the version of myself who still believed she could have what other Crethians have. But the actual people? No, they made it clear I did not belong. There is nothing there for me to miss. That must be lonely. It was, for a very long time. She turned to look at him, her skin shifting through colors. But I'm less lonely now. Jiho smiled gently. Good, that's good. Jiho. Velsha's voice was soft, uncertain. Can I ask you something? The bonding ritual I failed, it is meant to create deep connections between Crethians. Telepathic links that last for life. I was told I could never have that I was too different. She paused, struggling with the words. But what if the ritual itself was wrong? What if some Crethians are meant to find connection differently? What do you mean? Not through forced telepathy at adolescence, but through choice, through time and trust and friendship. Her skin was shifting rapidly now, betraying her nervousness. You said friendship is about showing up, about choosing to care. Is that not its own kind of bond? Jiho's expression grew serious. Yes, I think it is. Then perhaps I am not as broken as I believed. Velsha took a breath, committing to vulnerability in a way she never had before. Perhaps I simply needed to find my bond in a different way, with someone different. The air between them felt charged with something neither had named yet. Jiho took a small step closer. Velsha, are you saying what I think you're saying? I do not know what I am saying. I only know that when I nearly lost you during the evacuation, I realized something. She looked at her hands, watching colors dance across her crystalline skin. I realized that the thing I have been most afraid of, connection with another being, had already happened. I just had not acknowledged it. And now I want to acknowledge it. I want to stop pretending I do not care when I do. I want to... She trailed off, unsure how to express feelings she had suppressed for so long. Jiho reached out slowly, giving her time to move away. When she did not, he took her hand in his. Can I tell you something? These past months, getting to know you, watching you slowly open up have been the best part of my time on this station, maybe the best part of my whole life so far. You're brilliant and brave and kind in ways you don't even realize. And I care about you. A lot. Velsha looked at their joined hands, human and Crethian, warm flesh against crystalline surface. It should have been impossible, this connection between such different beings, but somehow it was the most natural thing in the universe. I care about you too, she whispered. More than I thought I could care about anyone. It terrifies me. Good thing humans are good at being terrifying, then. Jiho squeezed her hand gently. We don't have to define this or rush into anything. We can just keep being friends who care about each other, whatever that looks like, at whatever pace feels right. Velsha's skin began to glow with a color she had never displayed before. Silver, brilliant and iridescent like starlight caught in crystal. The color was so rare that most Crithians never showed it in their lifetimes. It was the color of profound choice, of bonds formed not by biology or ritual but by deliberate decision. The color that said, "I choose you above all others." "What does that mean?" Jiho asked softly, wonder in his voice. "It means—" Velsha struggled to find words for something her people had no formal name for, because it happened so rarely. "It means I choose you. Not because ritual demands it, not because telepathy links us, but because I want to. Because you saw past my defenses to the person underneath. Because you stayed when everyone else left. Because you make me want to be brave." "And that terrifies you," Jiho said with understanding. "Yes, because choosing means risking. If I let you in, truly in, you could hurt me in ways I have not been hurt before." "I could," Jiho acknowledged. "You could hurt me too. That's the risk of caring about someone. But Velsha, I think the risk is worth it. Don't you?" She thought about the past months, the slow building of trust, the small moments of kindness, the way Jiho had refused to accept her loneliness as permanent. She thought about nearly losing him to radiation and realizing that,